Alright, in this video, I want to talk about never giving up and never surrendering. And I see this quite often. I remember having such a slogan for myself growing up as a teenager and young adult to just never tap out, never give up, right? Just be a tough guy, right? Be a man. And not only that, be the toughest and the strongest and the best of men, right? Very competitive, very headstrong, very self-willed. And these have a use and they can benefit in certain situations. But to have this motto, never give up, never surrender, is not always a good thing. Sometimes the best thing you can do is to give up. The best thing you can do is to surrender. And what made me think of this is this morning I was reading in Exodus and I was reading chapter 12. And you should know by that point, the Pharaoh of Egypt, he gets all the way to the 10th plague where his firstborn son dies. And the firstborn of all the Egyptians die. The firstborn of all their cattle die. And he finally slightly gives in. And he finally lets the slaves go. But even then, he's like, no, he gets back up on his never give up, never surrender horse and charges after them. And we all know the story that he ends up drowning. Him and his whole army get destroyed. So we see that there's a point at which you should give up, you should surrender. Matter of fact, there was a point where one of Pharaoh's servants was saying, hey, stop, just let them go, get them out of here because Egypt is already destroyed. And this was around like the 4th, 5th plague. The Egyptians were already saying, hey, just let them go. Let Moses and his people out of Egypt. Get them out of here. Because how much more can we take? We're not going to survive this. He should have given up and he should have surrendered. But you see, a lot of us, we have this mentality of never give up, never surrender. Even though we know we're going to lose. But we have this pride and this arrogance to us where we're like, no, if we give up, it means we're weak and we're cowardly and we're soft and we're not a man. Or sometimes, women are the same way. They just think they're not measuring up. They have to do the same thing, right? But that's not the case. My personal experience is that I did not get saved until I gave up and surrendered to God. Because even when I first came to Jesus and I was reading the Bible, I became a Seventh-day Adventist and I believed I had to keep the law to be saved, right? And while doing so, I was realizing it was a burden. It was a burden because I had to fight myself. These things I knew were right and I knew God wanted me to do, or vice versa. I knew I shouldn't do and God didn't want me to do it. I found that within me I wanted to do the things that he told me not to do, and I didn't want to do the things he told me to do. So I had to force myself to do the things that he said to do that I didn't really want to do, and I had to force myself not to do the things that he told me not to do, right? And I was realizing that I can't do this. But at the same time, I had this same kind of motto. Maybe not exactly this, but it was like never give up, never surrender. And I talked to Seventh-day Adventists today, and they still have that same mindset. You got to keep trying. You can't give up. And I was like, that's the only way you can be saved, because you're on a treadmill. Where when you're on a treadmill, you just stay in one place. or a stationary bike. You're stationary. You're just sitting there pedaling in place. You're not going anywhere. And there's the carrot of salvation hanging before you. This beautiful golden carrot of salvation that once you reach it, you're saved. But when you're on that treadmill, you're on that elliptical, you're on that stationary bike, you're not going anywhere. So you're chasing this thing, never going to get it. But you keep telling yourself, never give up, never surrender. But you know you're never going to get it because you have to be perfect. And you know that you're not perfect. And not only that, your intentions are not perfect because you do it to escape hell. You do it to earn heaven. You don't do it out of a love for God. You don't do it out of a love for others. You're doing it for yourself. Right? And you know, even your best efforts, all you're doing is fighting yourself. So even with your best efforts, you're not changing the problem. The problem is you and your desire to do what is wrong and not to do what is right. And if you keep doing this, never give up, never surrender, you're going to fail. You're going to end up like the Pharaoh. I mean, you're going to destroy yourself. And that's what happened to me. I realized I can't do it. And I had my own fight with God saying, you got to change me because I can't do this. Little did I realize he was leading me to the cross, to the gospel, the good news of my salvation, that he already saved me. He already saved you. He already saved us all. We just have to accept it. You see, he lived that perfect life that we're trying to live and that we can't do. I find this talking to the Seventh-day Adventists and the Catholics thinking you got to keep at it. Even though you're not perfect, you got to keep trying. No, God said to be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. He didn't say try and I'll give you an A for effort and you'll make it. No, you either do it or you fail. It's 100% or you don't make it. It's a very strict test. It's not, oh, you get 90% and you're good. No, 100%, not 99.9%, 100 or you fail. We couldn't do it. That's why God came into this world to live that perfect life for us. So that when he died, he didn't die for himself. He died because of us and our sin. But because he was dying for our sin, he was able to raise from the dead. And since we at the cross, by faith, are willing to give him our life, our past, present, and future, he gives us his past, present, and future when he raises from the dead. Because by faith we die with him, so also by faith we raise with him. But we have to give up. We have to surrender. And I was noticing a lot of people, especially the people I talk to who happen to be Catholics and Seventh-day Adventists, their pride won't let them get off the treadmill. They'll just keep going. But you're never going to get there. I've talked to an Adventist who was 90-something years old, and he was telling me I got to stop sinning. Not that I was sinning in front of him or anything. He was just saying in general, you got to stop sinning if you want to be saved, you want to go to heaven. I asked him, have you stopped sinning? Reluctantly, he said no. And I asked him, how long have you been a Christian or a Seventh-day Adventist? And he said since he was around 10, 12 years old. I was like, so like 80 years you've been a Christian and you haven't stopped sinning yet. How long are you going to run on this treadmill until you realize that you can't do it? When are you going to give up and surrender? And I say that do the same thing even when struggling with sin. But that's for, I guess, another video for this phone one here because you can only do 10 minutes. I'm at about 10 minutes, so I'm going to stop this one I'm doing on my phone here. Thanks for watching and take care. Alright, I was doing this on my phone so I can put that to TikTok and doing this here. But I would say to do the same thing even when it comes to sin. And you may be thinking, what, you're saying to give in to sin? Yes and no. You see, it's your fight against it that gives it the strength. Like we're told in one of the Corinthians books there that the strength of sin is the law. And it's you listening to that law and trying to obey that law that strengthens that sin. Because when you see the law that says something like, don't envy, don't lust, don't lie, right? And you like to do those things, what ends up happening? You start to think about those things, and you start to think about not doing those things. So your focus is not on God and loving God. It's not focused on your fellow man and loving your fellow man. It's focused on yourself and your sin and you trying not to do it. So all your focus and attention is on that. You give it strength. And eventually it gets too much for you to hold on. And it breaks forth. Right? So you need to give in. And you may be thinking, what, just give in to the sin? You need to give in to realize that you can't fight it. And you need to come to God and admit this truth to Him. Open up your heart to God and be honest with Him, saying, Lord, I don't want to do what you want me to do. I know what you say is right, and you tell me not to do these things. I want to do them. I know it's wrong to do it, but I want to do it. And my whole life is just focusing on that, trying to do what you want me to do and not do what you don't want me to do. But I just have this sin rising up in me that doesn't care and wants to do all those things and doesn't want to do all those other things. And I can't handle it. I can't do it. Have mercy on me, a sinner. I can't do it. I give up. I surrender. I don't want to carry this burden for the rest of my life. Some of you might be 20-something years old, and you may live 80, 90, maybe till you're 120, right? Who knows? You may be strong now, carrying that burden, thinking, hey, I'll never give up. I'll never surrender. But you're going to spend your whole life carrying that burden. Imagine that if you wanted to be a tough guy. Imagine you had to carry, let's say, 100 pounds on your shoulders all day, every day. And if you give up and you surrender, you're not a man. You're a loser. You're trash. And yeah, in order to be a man, you can never put that burden down. Or, to be a good woman, you got to do the same thing. Right? Maybe you can go a very long time. Maybe you can go way longer than any other man or woman besides God. Right? So what? Why would you want to do that? Right? It's going to have a negative effect on your mood, a negative effect on your body. You're not going to be able to enjoy yourself, enjoy others. Your whole focus is always going to be trying to maintain holding that weight, and your life is going to suck. So even if you could do it, so what? Why do it? So you can live up to that never give up, never surrender mindset? Screw that. Get off the treadmill, put the weight down, realize you can't do it, and cry out to God for mercy. Because He is very merciful and very gracious. And you realize that He saved you. And you accept that salvation. Put the burden down. And then what you realize, because this is where a lot of people, when I talk to Seventh-day Adventists and Catholics about this, I have to put this tidbit in. I was going to wrap it up here, but I have to say this, is they'll say, you're saying do as thou wilt, and just to go live in sin. Wrong. Are you saying that that's what I'm doing? If you're going to accuse me of sin, show me my sin. If you can't show me my sin, then shut up about those things. Because I've never once condoned sinning into living in sin, so don't lie about me. Especially if you think lying is a sin and you're condemned to hell for sinning, such as lying, then don't lie about me. Because I've never said such a thing. You just believe that because you can't fathom any other reason for fighting and never giving up, never surrendering, and not sinning other than for yourself, so that you don't go to hell and so that you can go to heaven. And if you don't have to do that to avoid hell and earn heaven, why would you do it? Why would you serve God and obey Him? Well, because you actually love Him and you love your fellow man. That's why you. But you see, once you actually give up, that's when you join with the Lord. That's when He dwells within you. And He starts to walk with you and change you from the inside out, where all of a sudden, now that you're free from the law, it doesn't have that grasp on you anymore. Because you're no longer thinking about your sin and trying not to give in to it. You're thinking about God and praising Him for His perfect life that He offered you, for His salvation, for Him clothing you with His righteousness. And now those sins, you don't even think about them. They don't have a hold on you anymore. He set you free. So now you can actually live that life you've been trying to live, but you live it by the grace of God, where He's already given you the victory because He got the victory. So now those things that you fight against, whether it's just something like you envying others, and why can't those kind of things happen to you, and you're jealous. These kind of things just fade away, where you're just like, well, I know I'm saved. I want to be with God for eternity. I have nothing to worry about. So you become content, and you're not thinking about those things anymore. Or you're a very lustful person. All of a sudden, that desire changes, where you look at others not as some kind of sexual pleasure, but as a fellow human being, another fellow member of mankind, a brother, a sister, somebody who needs to be saved just like you did. You see, these things change in you. And you'll notice that it has no effort on your part whatsoever. You gave up and you surrendered to God, and all of a sudden He's molded you and changed you, where from the inside out you don't have those same desires anymore. So there is no temptation. There's nothing to fight. And this is something that happens as you grow with the Lord. It's not instantaneously, as soon as you accept Him, all of a sudden you're perfect. No, as you walk with Him in prayer and reading His Word, you change from the inside out. As in, you're not just controlling yourself and your desires, you don't have those desires. And it's relief. That's where you get that fruit of that Spirit, the joy, the love, the peace from Galatians 5. You don't have that while you're trying to save yourself. That's why Jesus tells us in Matthew 11, "Come on to me, all ye that are heavy laden, and I'll give you rest." He says He gives rest to our souls. What is that labor that we're all struggling to do? Is to save ourselves, to avoid hell and to earn heaven. He's saying, hey, come to me, and I'll give a rest for your soul, where I'll save your soul, so that you're no longer carrying that burden. Put it down. Give up and surrender. Because I did it. And I'm going to give you my victory. So with all that being said, thanks for watching, and take care. Alright, here's the 3 verses that I like to put in all the videos here. Isaiah 34:16, seek ye out the book of the Lord and read, so that Jesus doesn't tell you what He tells the Sadducees here in Matthew 22:29, ye do err, not knowing the scriptures. It's not that you err in error because you don't know the one true church that happens to be your denomination, or that you don't know the fundamental beliefs, or the Nicene Creed, the Apostles' Creed, or whatever creed, or that you don't know the magisterium or the clergy, or you don't know your favorite pastor or priest. That's why you're in error. No, you're in error because you don't know the scriptures. You need the scriptures to test to see whether or not those are correct, whether those are the right traditions, whether those are legitimate clergy, whether that church is actually following God, and whether those creeds line up. Those fundamental beliefs are found in the scriptures. Because knowing the scriptures is knowing God. Like we read here in John 17:3, Jesus says, "And this is life eternal, that they might know thee, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom thou hast sent." This is a deep knowing. As Adam knew Eve and she conceived, you need to know God in like manner, so that you may be born again, that his word, his seed, abides in your heart, where you truly believe that Jesus Christ is God in the flesh, that he died in your place and gives you his life in exchange, so that your righteousness, your good and your bad, your life, past, present, and future, died 2,000 years ago. Your life is his. He can do what he wants with it. He puts it to death, and he gives you his life in exchange, his perfect, eternal life. That's the deep knowing you need to know of God. So, there you go. Do you know him? Do you want to know him? Get to know him. Thanks again for watching. Take care.
That fella couldn't join the church. He couldn't join the church. He couldn't get baptized. He couldn't get baptized. He woke up with God. He woke up with the devil. Are you saved? Amen. So that fella didn't take the sacraments. Didn't take the sacraments. Didn't say the rosary. Didn't take the rosary. Didn't tithe. Didn't tithe. He went to heaven. He went to hell. You saved? Didn't keep the law. He didn't keep the law. He broke the commandments. He broke the commandments. He didn't keep the golden rule. He didn't keep the golden rule. He woke up in glory. He woke up in the pit. Are you saved? You're saved. If you're not saved, you're over here or you're over here. You sure ain't in the middle. He said, Lord, remember me, thou comest thy kingdom. And Jesus turned to him and said, Verily I say unto thee, today shalt thou be saved. It's like that. You have been saved? If you ever saved, you were saved like that.